The Abita Mystery House was totally inspired by Tinkertown in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My family and I decided to take a trip. It was about 1999. And we went to Albuquerque, and like the second day in Albuquerque, we found Tinkertown. And it was there was a brochure, and it was said it was made out of a lot of bottles and crazy stuff. And I said, "Wow, that sounds fun." And we drive in, and it looks amazing from the highway. We get into Tinkertown, we walk around, we gave them our little admission money, and I just couldn't believe it. I'd never seen anything like it. And the guy was a master painter. I was looking at the painted pieces, but he had miniature towns and all these kind of things and some arcade equipment. And my kids liked it, my wife, we all liked it at different age levels. Tinkertown was put together by Ross Ward and his wife Carla. And I met Ross there, and we became friends. And I said, "Well, gee, how many people want to open a museum after they see your place?" And he said, "Nobody." And I said, "Well, I'm going to go home and do it maybe." I said, "I'll be in touch." And so we became friends and corresponded. I flew back a few times to see him and talk to him and learn how he did what he did. It was a perfect timing, perfect storm or whatever. It would not have happened without Tinkertown. And I think of Ross Ward and Carla every day. We wanted to open a museum, we wanted to find a place, and there were several places available, that we liked. I lived 2 blocks away from here, and this was a cool little gas station. So I found the guy who owned it. I got on the internet and did my research. I talked to him. He says, "Yeah, you called me at the right time. I'm thinking about selling it." And it was good timing. And he said, "What do you think you want to pay for it?" I said, "I don't even know." I said, "I'll call you back tomorrow. Let me talk to my wife." And so I called him back, and I said, "Well, did you think of a price?" Because he didn't really know a price. He said, "Well, I talked to my wife, and she said 30. I said, "Well, that's what my wife said." He said, "Well, done deal." I started working on the place, building things, moving things here and all that, and we had to come up with a name. So the first name we came up with, Is It Town. Visit Is It. And I really liked that because it was stupid, but is it, with a question mark for the logo or whatever. And my son, he said, "Why don't you call it the UCM Museum?" And it's like a play on words. And then I realized it could be the letters UCM. So I thought, oh yeah, that's a fun name. We can do with that. And I'll have an eyeball, like for a logo or something. So we went with that. And after 7 years, I was invited to speak at the American Museum Association. I said, "This is not my group. They might be nice people, but they're boring." And I realized museums are basically really boring. And so I said, I gotta change my name. And so that summer we went out to San Jose, California, to the Winchester Mystery House. And I said, "Mystery House, that's what I need to do." And then Abita Mystery House, that gives you the name, the location, and it says attraction, when you say it. And eventually we're gonna get a sign on the interstate, so that would make more sense, instead of UCM. UCM, we have people, more than one person has walked into the museum, they've looked in the gift shop, and they said, "You have any Army and Navy stuff?" Because they think it's UMC. My plan now is to change the name every 7 years. So, we get the building, and then I realized I need a main exhibit hall. And knowing what Ross had in Tinkertown, I basically copied everything he did. He had an exhibit hall, I had an exhibit hall. And then we just built a lot of sheds and added things to it, walkways and, turtle ponds and things like that. It took me 2 or 3 months to build a place. I went out to garage sales and flea markets, finding things that were, appropriate for me, thinking I need to get more stuff. And then once we opened up, people started bringing me stuff, lots of stuff every day. It was, bottle caps, license plates, and whatever, video games, pinball machines. And so it's sort of like Christmas a lot. I'll come and open up in the morning at 10 o'clock. We're open 10 to 5 every day. At 10 o'clock, and there'll be a box out by my front door with a little note, "Hope you can use this," or whatever. So how many bottle caps? Yeah, people ask me that all the time. And well, we know we have at least 250,000 because there was somebody from the brewery brought a whole bunch of caps. They call them crowns or whatever. In boxes, and then on the side of the box they said how many there were, and they were all purple at the time. So we painted them. You can look at the floor and see where we painted them. So, I mean, one day this guy walks in with these leg shackles, and he was an old Abita guy. His dad was the sheriff in Abita. He said, "This came from the old jail. My dad, the sheriff, he had these for years, and you can put them in the museum, da-da-da." And we also have the jail bars from the window of the jail, somewhere around here. It's big, heavy iron grate type of thing. I worked for like 3 or 4 months building the buildings and populating all the stuff in it, and Tinkertown had a miniature town, so I made the miniature town, and I was here like 12, 13 hours a day working on everything and getting very close. And at some point my wife said, "Look, you got to open up. When do you decide to open up?" And I thought maybe I was 80% finished, and so she said, "Open up." So I opened up, and there was no big grand fanfare. It's just like I had a sign that said "open." And then people started flowing in, and I got some great publicity early on, and it's the kind of thing that people write about. So it was fun to do that. Now I feel like I'm only 20% finished. The more I see the place, the more I see I need to do more stuff. Whenever you have a small business in a town, people come up and say, "Oh, can I work for you?" Da 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 da. I said, "Well, I'm not sure if we have work, but certainly you could volunteer, and I'd show you everything, how to run a museum, and everything. I'd have no secrets, and I'd loan you money if you need money sometimes, but it's just, it's not about working here for money. It's about learning and having fun with the environment." We sell jewelry also. My late wife designed jewelry, and we still make it, and so it really helps to have a pretty girl, try to sell the jewelry for us. And so the girls want to volunteer, and do stuff, and they want to help out. And and we create a fun environment for anybody who wants to volunteer. We basically allow them the ownership of the place. While you're here, you can kind of own it. You can lay out the merchandise the way you want. I let them wear the jewelry for prom and homecoming and all that. And if they have a date, they want to wear some jewelry. So I kind of, we trade out stuff like that. And I help them with homework or whatever. I brought one to the doctor last night, So it's just one of those things that we enjoy, We're friends. Anybody who volunteers here, we become friends. Probably the highlight of the museum are the animated dioramas. We have a miniature town and there's things with buttons that you push a button and things move around. And, we have a variety of Southern folk life scenes. Trailer parks, plantations, barbecue places, general stores. Tinkertown has that. He's got a Wild West type of theme. So we did what I call River Road. Any place in the Deep South, there's a road along a river, and there's a garage, a bed and breakfast, a lounge.
I like the jazz funeral little diorama. The push button things, sometimes they play music or they just kind of bounce around. And my favorite one is the jazz funeral because it's based off of New Orleans. And I feel like it's pretty spot on to how some of them can be.
I come through in my spare time. I play with the pinball machines. I will walk around and press buttons. And every time I come through the museum, I see something that I haven't seen before, which is crazy.
So, I'm copying Tinkertown. Everything I do, I think about what he had and how successful it was. And he's got a boat that one of his in-laws sailed all around the world with. So it was like, wow, that's a nice outdoor exhibit. And then I came back to Louisiana saying, I got to have something like that. What's my equivalent? And at the same time, we were trying to figure out what we have. We needed a jackalope. Out west, there's the jackalope. So what can we do? And so we started playing around with ideas. I forget who came up with it, but we came up with the bassigator, half bass, half alligator. And that was really a good thing for us. So I called my friend Dave Kelsey. His daughter volunteers here. And Dave, this place would not exist without Dave also. He's a scenic artist for the movies and very, very talented. And Dave and I do projects always together. So I said, Dave, you want to make a bassigator with me? He said, yeah, let's do it. He had an old boat trailer. He said, we can put it on the boat trailer. I bought the boat trailer from him. And then in 2.5 days, we built the bassigator. First year we had it, we said, well, let's put it in a Mardi Gras parade. And we pulled it behind a truck that looked like we had just been fishing, and then we caught the bassigator. And it was very successful. Now, the funny thing was, for that Mardi Gras parade, we had to get there early. So at 6 o'clock, we had to tow the bassigator to Covington. 3 miles away. And we passed a little laundromat / bar room, and there's some winos sitting outside, and they see the basset gator going down the street, and they really flip, because the thing looks very realistic, because it's scaled perfectly, it was painted perfectly, and it's towed behind his truck. I know they thought it was real, and it was like, it was the funniest thing that, you know, when these guys like were waking up that morning and seeing the basset gator down the street.
I like all of the weird taxidermy, like alligator things that John does, because I like to do taxidermy, which is a super weird hobby. But I like taxidermy, and so I like all of the like mashed up animals that John makes.
You know, somebody gave me a squirrel that was stuffed. I said, oh, I can put a gator head on that. So we started putting gator heads on everything, you know, and that's kind of how it happened. And so, you know, I found an appropriate little plastic skull and got a fish body. And then it was like, oh, that looks good on a fish. I wonder what it looked like on a squirrel body. And then we started, you know, whatever the gator head went on, we put a human skull on.
Instantly when I came here, I was obsessed with the basset gator. You know, it's such a cool structure. My little sisters come here and they love the machine where to make medallions. So it's a medallion machine, and you pull the lever, and then you can turn it to, you know, each letter. You make your name, you know, a sentence of whatever. That's really neat. The fortune teller is pretty cool. It's like the fortune teller from Big. And there's so many kooky things here. And he's always adding and taking away things.
I love the mosaic building, the House of Shards, because I think it's beautiful. It's so interesting, and I always tell people to go back there and take pictures and really like try and play I Spy in the parts to see which tile they like the best.
Yeah, so the House of Shards, that's probably the most photographed house, you know, in St. Tammany. And I love it. I like mosaic work, and I've always liked mosaic work. And I've always collected pieces of pottery and glass for one day of doing a project. And this house came with the property, and it was a brick stucco house. And it was painted pink. It was kind of a pretty little house. The hard part was getting the pieces ready to put on the wall, because if you have a dish, you have to find the flat areas. It's still not finished. You know, a lot of my projects never get finished, but it's not like, if I get close enough, I'm happy. You know, people ask me what's my favorite thing, and usually it's the latest thing I've done. And one of the latest things I've done was the three-faced dog, steel dog. It's a steel, maybe it's a seal, maybe it's a dog, but it's very fun to see. And we built a little box, and it's nice. Also, Crisco the clown is really one of my favorites. After Katrina, out on the street was everything known to man that people did not want, that could have been rescued, saved. And certainly there were a lot of pickers, antique pickers driving around the streets every day of New Orleans. And I, you know, people call me and say, hey, I just saw this out on the street, you might want to get it, da-da-da. And so someone called me, there was an arcade store in Slidell. And somebody said, all the stuff's out on the street, he put everything out. So I knew the guy that owned it. I said, look, are you throwing it all away? He said, yeah, come by and pick it up. Yeah, I don't want it. So Crisco the clown was in that trash pile. So I got it. And it was originally called Bimbo the Dancing Clown. So there were a lot of YouTubes of Bimbo the Dancing Clown, and some of the people liked it. You had an 8-track player that did the sound. And the 8-track, the tape had stretched, so it was like, I'm Bimbo, you know. And it was very eerie, and people loved how creepy it was. So I said, oh, well, maybe I can go with that. And so I started working with that, and then I realized you know, it could be really creepy, you know, and so I dressed it up in pajamas and made the face kind of odd, kind of, you know, scary, clownish.
We have Crisco, who's the handmade, or John's made machine, which is played with my voice. And it's this dancing clown, and you push the buttons and insert a quarter, and he moves his arms and legs a little bit, strung on strings, and my voice plays in the background, which I thought was really weird. And customers always come in and they're like, what's your favorite part about the museum? And I'd have to say, Crisco the Dancing Clown, because it's my voice.
I'm Crisco the Dancing Clown. Push your buttons, I'll dance around. Got a white face and pretty hair, and I got lots of toys I like to share.
We got 3 alligator snapping turtles, and people brought them to me over the years, and They were kind of rescue turtles. They were stuck in traps or, whatever, crossing the road, a highway. And the first one we got was a large female, and her name is Tina. A big turtle, small name, da da da. And then somebody brings me another turtle, a smaller turtle, and I say Tina, well, Ike. So Ike and Tina. And I'd seen Ike and Tina years ago, and they seem to be happy. I have a friend of mine's a turtle scientist. He studies alligator snapping turtles for a living, and he keeps track of them and checks on the health. And he says they're fine. Everything's peachy. And the little ones, it's Bob and Marley, and I'm not sure which is which. The Airstream came from Dave Kelsey. It was a part of a movie set, and he had got it off the movie set. He bought it from the production company because he thought he could use it. He and his wife could travel in it. They had it parked out in their yard, and a big tree went right down the middle of it, a big pine tree. So I realized we could put it in the museum, and then where it was all bent up, we attached a satellite dish and made a flying saucer out of it.
I come in, turn on all of the lights that are hidden underneath so many different pockets and wooden little hatches. Customers come in usually from out of town, or customers will come in saying, wow, I pass by here every day and I've never come in. But mostly like parents coming in with their children, or kids from down the street, or a couple of older couples coming in just to look around. It's almost like stepping back in time for them. So they hear about it from their friends or from seeing it in pamphlets or in the newspaper, and they come in and take a visit.
Yeah, so, I come in here, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna get into. One day I came in thinking I was gonna mow a lawn, and in the very back of the museum, he had a jackhammer set up. And he said, see that concrete right there? It's all coming up. So spent the entire day just jackhammering.
Obviously, I do a lot of maintenance work, but I've done a lot, I think, to contribute to the actual museum itself. I've worked on projects. I do some touch-up painting and keep the place running.
I try to clean, but sometimes that doesn't happen. I man the gift shop and talk to customers and ask them how their day's going. So that's pretty much it. It's a pretty easy job.
John's just a weird guy, to be honest. And that's what I love about him, because he's great. He's like a father figure to me, because my family, they live in Mobile. And then I come over here, and he's constantly giving me advice. And he leads you in the right direction, He's a good guy.
I've always wanted to work here because it's wild and fun. And my dad has done some sign work for John. He did the Bassigator, which is outside, and he has donated some pieces of weird things here. And so it's always just been like kind of laid out that I would eventually get a job here. Without the UCM, Abita is like just another small town, but UCM makes it like special. I think all of the visual appeal of it, all the paintings and everything just being everywhere. Places you wouldn't expect things to be, like computer pieces on the ceiling and just things that you think is a household common item, but in this museum it becomes something magical. John has always been like a part of my life, even though he wasn't like my family. But one of my first sentences was, John Preble is a crazy old coot. And my parents taught me that when I was very young, so that whenever he came over I could say that. And it's still true, and I still like to tease him about it. But I've always known him, and he's always been that guy with the glasses on his head all sideways. And he's a crazy, wild dude.
I think what definitely makes this a second home for me is that it does have a sense of humor and a sense of just weirdness that you don't really get anywhere else, and you can come and be yourself. Working with John is definitely an experience. He's taught me a lot. He's got such a great sense of humor that he's so easy to talk to. Like I said, if I could have everybody work with him, like I would, because he definitely opens you up to a new world that you didn't see before.
Well, he is definitely a character. He's one of my favorite people. He's talked to me a lot about life and everything, so I really like him. He's a really good boss. he's very interesting now.
John is an incredible mentor. He's like, I guess like a second dad to me. I talk to my parents all the time about John, and my parents love John so much. He really pushes us to boundaries that we really didn't think we could achieve.
The question comes up, what's in the future for the Abita Mystery House? You know, what are you going to expand and all that? I always say I'm going to go up, you know, add another floor, which, you know, maybe in my life I could do that. Who knows? But we do have a few sheds that are not available for viewing. It's just basically junk in them. And we're going to be opening up those sheds. My goal is even the studio space, eventually we'll have all exhibit area. So people can walk around and see everything, and we can have a studio off premises. You know, it doesn't have to be here. I think it's more important to waste people's time, you know, as much as we can waste, you know, and if we have more things to look at, the more time they can waste. That's sort of my philosophy with, you know, my place.